I am Iron Man.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I want you to remember the one man who beat you.
The Force will be with you, always.
A king's time as ruler rises and falls like the sun.
All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome to another crossover episode of Suit Up Meets A Pod Has No Name. Joining us today is my man Tom. Follow him on Twitter at TomDS215. What's going on, Tom?
Not much. This is one of the hardest days of the year. Is a Tuesday coming off of a long weekend. We all got our mashed potato brains, but you know what? We're here for you, and we're here for the fans.
Absolutely. Also joining us today is my man Shane. Check him out on Twitter at Gus Chiggins. What's going on, Shane?
What's up, Chris? How's it going? Excited to get some Snowpiercer in with you guys today.
Yes. So today we are talking about episode 2 of Snowpiercer. Spoiler warning, guys. Episode 2 was all about the stress and harsh realities of living on Snowpiercer. But before we get started, Shane, tell us a little bit about what's going on with A Pod Has No Name, man.
So tomorrow we're actually going to be recording our finale pod for Warbreaker. I just finished the book today. So I know me and Tom are itching to, react to everything that happened in the final frame of the book there on tomorrow's pod. And then we're going to jump into writing the Words of Radiance, save today, and continue with the Stormlight Archive. So a finale pod and a intro pod to at the end of a book and the start of a book coming within the next week and a half here. So exciting times. Awesome. Check out A Pod Has No Name on Twitter and Reddit. That is at A Pod Has No Name. All right, guys, let's dig into episode 2 of Snowpiercer. Today, we're going to talk about what worked, what didn't, and kind of give our final grades on the episode. Guys, I'll lead us off here. For me, atmosphere, guys. I thought this episode did a truly fantastic job of showcasing Snowpiercer's atmosphere. Watching Andre Layton go in between the different train cars. There was one that was like a night train that had it was basically a Broadway show. Then there was another one which was like a food market where they're eating noodles. And I got to say, I'm kind of impressed by the food choices in the show so far. We've had a grilled cheese with tomato soup. We've had a smoked salmon sushi roll. And now we've had this, so a noodle bowl. So
and even a little bit of human arm here and there.
We'll get to that. We'll get to the cannibalism, but I gotta say, I'm digging the food choices on Snowpiercer. But back to this episode and the atmosphere, guys. I got some Blade Runner vibes during that scene where they're going in that food market area that between the film score and there's just so many Blade Runner vibes. And I gotta admit, guys, I was very critical of the premiere. I was probably a little unfair on the premiere, but man, this episode got me. I went from here to there within that first 20 minutes. Shane, what was a positive? What worked for you in this episode, man?
So, last week, just based off of what we saw from, the movie and how that kind of led to expectations going into the show, last week, it didn't really follow the same path or the path that you might have expected it to follow going into it, but it did seem like it was setting a lot of things up. And now, even after the second episode, an even clearer picture is almost getting painted in the direction that they're taking it. And you can see that, you're going to get to know members of the Tale. You're seeing in an episode by episode basis, the struggles that they go through. We saw the dismemberment of the arm this episode, which was, an iconic scene, an iconic fate kind of that can happen to members of the Tale. So just seeing how they're planting the seeds and having these small, you had the small rebellion that gets crushed. And now how that's going to, impact the story going forward. I'm excited to see how they're laying the groundwork for what's to come.
What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I think the balance between the homage to the source material, whether it's the movie, I'm sure there's a lot of things in the original graphic novels that are being adapted here as well, while also kind of for lack of a better term, expanding the Snowpiercer universe here to introducing us to just different elements of the society and kind of giving us even more color, like a TV show allows you to do, has been fun. And it's yeah, I would say that's definitely my most positive takeaway on it. Is that balance between homage to the movie and to probably the original series, balanced with some new and interesting plots that are kind of showing us the rest of the world.
Yeah, when we recorded our premiere, I was like fresh after watching it, like within 15 minutes, and I remember being so upset that they turned this like show about social order into a murder mystery, and I'm gonna take it back, guys. I got to take it back. I loved how the first episode just felt rushed to me. It was super high paced, but they just kind of jumped the gun. This episode, I thought, really broke down the characters. They really kind of did a deep dive into Leighton's character. I'm really interested to see where that kind of romantic history goes moving forward. They really got into Jennifer Connelly, and I think you touched on this one last time, Shane, about how Jennifer Connelly is absolutely crushing this role. I thought she was even better this week. I thought it was really interesting to see the stress and the anxiety that she's going through on a day-to-day basis. Like, that was fascinating. So I love how they kind of like, it was a kind of a high-paced episode, but I liked how the focus was on select characters. Any take on that, Shane?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, especially about Jennifer Connelly. Daveed Diggs, I think this week did it for me a lot more than last week. I think we just got to see his character in different, different circumstances and and more, show his acting chops a little bit more. So I thought he impressed me this week. Jennifer Connelly, obviously. And what I'm really curious about, the storyline that I'm curious to follow, is now with Miles being, chosen for that program to go to the front of the train. Last week I hadn't realized that wasn't his real mother. That was, just somebody who took care of him once he was on the train. And I maybe have to rewatch that first sequence, that first 10 minutes of last week, maybe to follow some clues there. But I'm really curious in that story, because we know from the movie, what happens with children down the train. But even if you ignore that, the planting the seeds for rebellion, where now you're going to have, Miles towards the front of the train. You got Strong Boy and the two other gentlemen from the tail that were put to sleep in those drawers. So I like how they're kind of just planting these seeds for things that'll happen later on in the season. But I'm curious about those characters, like Miles and the mother, kind of in particular at this point.
Yeah, any take on that, Tom, or another strength?
Yeah, it's similar to kind of what Star Wars did with The Mandalorian, where you're breaking down something that a normal story is, an hour and 45 minutes to 2.5 hours, and you're moving it along. We got to be a little bit more deliberate, where here they can be a little bit more procedural and take their time, and have different side stories, and then also have this main murder mystery kind of going slowly along. And we're also seeing his investigation tactics, when they're planning the rebellion, when he's drawing the thing out on the on the cloth and he steals the pen earlier in the episodes. When you have the time that a 10 or 12 episode season gives you to breathe, especially with hour episodes, you can do a lot of those interesting things. And I think we saw a lot more of that in episode 2.
I also thought it was a much darker episode, especially the gore. I don't know about you guys, but I thought the violence and the gore just went up to here as well.
Yeah,
it was pretty awesome. We had they really kind of dove into cannibalism in this episode, and we got our first look at the freezing of the arm. We were all kind of expecting that one to show up. I thought it was actually handled really, really well for, I think it was the first scene in the show, but you saw kind of dozens of people get frozen to death already. From that avalanche and all that. You saw limbs being hidden in that, what was that, air duct or something like that?
Yeah.
So I feel this was a much darker, violent episode, and I think that really meshed well with the tone. and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Let's talk a little bit about what didn't work. To start, guys, I'm going to pour one out for all the filet mignons and the T-bone steaks that are absolutely gone from Snowpiercer, because I'm all about food here. So, Tom, what's a weakness? What didn't work with this week's episode?
Yeah, that was just to jump back real quick. That was like another thing they did. It was interesting. Like, there's this entire subplot of now that we lost all the cows,
Yeah.
how can we heat the train and like produce energy and feed the people? Like, just really, really interesting things to dive into when you have the space to breathe. I guess the one thing that didn't really work for me, I mean, it like worked. I'm just like a little bit nervous about it. Is kind of like the HBO, like the early 2010s HBO, like the pulpiness of it, where it's like uber violent, like uber sexual, a lot of nudity, like I always remember in Forgetting Sarah Marshall when she's on that TV show, like crime scene of the crime, and just like all the references to like the guy being castrated and like, yeah, he was really tortured, and then like, you know, so I just feel like I worry sometimes if you go too much in that direction to draw people in, which I guess Game of Thrones kind of did as well in like its earlier seasons, where it was like hypersexual,
over the top at some point,
violent, over the top. That can be like a little much, but beyond that, I thought it was a generally strong episode.
Yeah. What about you, Shane? Go ahead, man.
You know, I couldn't really think. I felt like this week was pretty straightforward. Most of my questions really so far just have to do with like long-term plot, but I didn't really like, there was nothing that jumped out at me that like didn't really work.
Yeah.
In that regard. One thing, just to touch on something that I think the episode did in terms of like the overall story, is like in the movie you hear a lot about like what like the messed up things that happen in the tail section of the train. Like you hear that kind of as the movie goes on. But you're kind of just like running from cart to cart to cart in that movie, right? Yep. So I liked how in this episode, through this murder and kind of with the noodle shop and how they were using human meat, like it's kind of showing that like it's almost saying that like all levels of society, almost all like classes or whatnot, has like messed up shit going on. So I thought that was a nice kind of touch to it. But then we'll see how they tie it in with the overall mystery of like who murdered him and why. But I thought it was nice to show that like these other classes and levels of the train also have their own problems, and I thought you kind of saw that from Daveed Diggs, where he's like, you guys have your own problems up here.
Totally. Yeah, I don't have much, guys. I kind of butchered the first episode, but if I had to pick and choose, I'd probably say they got going away from the cars. I really enjoyed the first half of the episode where they were kind of going in between the different cars and the cows and the noodle shop, and I want more of that. And I totally understand why they wouldn't reveal like all this, because they want you to come back wanting more, and I totally get it. However, I want more Jennifer Connelly. I think Jennifer Connelly is stealing every single scene she's in this show right now. I'd like to see more emphasis on that character. That being said, it's been renewed for a second season, I believe. Maybe, I don't know about season 3. So I really am enjoying that character. Tom, what grade would you give this episode?
So I think I don't want to break out the heavy grades yet, because I want to be a tough grader and I want to give it I know the show's listening to me. I know the show's listening to this. So I want to give it some room to grow. So I'm going to go with a B.
Okay.
Like a higher B, maybe like an 86.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it, and I think it's doing a good job of moving things along. It's definitely captured my interest, but I think there is more there. And to your point, kind of your main weapon, your main tool in the shed, however you want to phrase it, is the environment, and is how they shoot and stylize all the different carts and all the and kind of show that classism. And this episode, we really, really got to see them kind of flex the style of it with the colors and the brightness between the different cars. And I just think it did a really, really good job of selling the difference as you kind of climb forward. So I'll go a high B.
How about you? How about you, Shane?
Yeah, I think B is a fair answer now with like the with the asterisk saying that like it's a B now, but as the show goes along, like that grade, as long as they keep checking off boxes for me, that grade will go, maybe a little bit up. So B now, but potential for A. I did have one question for you guys about a scene. So
Yes.
it's Jennifer Connelly and the doctor. And there's that woman on the table with the arm. No, that was the only thing about the episode I was a little bit lost on.
Yeah,
It didn't really click for me. That's like the one part of the plot I'm having trouble piecing together. Did you guys have any thoughts on that, or like what's going on there?
Some sort of disease is spreading through the third
So
class.
that's what I was thinking. Like, is there going to be like some sort of like
class or
contagion going around the train, maybe, or something?
Well, they showed the tailies. I think it was going on with the tailies, and I don't know if that was the first class or the third class. I would guess the first class is the lady that they showed. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. This is like a constant thing that I'm just saying to Shane all the time. But basically, like I think you're in the right direction, but it's just too early to make the call.
Yeah.
I appreciate the look forward, but I'm not ready to commit to any one theory based off a small snippet. But I like the thought process.
Little before I get to my review, I thought there was a little nod to the Hunger Games at the very beginning there when that little girl was going to get her arm kind of frozen off. You had the mom kind of step in, like offer herself as tribute.
Yeah, that was pretty powerful.
It was well done. It was really well done. All right. From the story, the score, the atmosphere, man, I thought the character development, we actually had some character development in this week's episode. I'm just really having a hard time kind of knocking this episode down, man. Everything about this week was better than the premiere. Jennifer Connelly is absolutely crushing it. And I really, truly believe if they continue to focus on Jennifer Connelly and just continue to add layers to her character, man, you have to feel optimistic about this show. I'm in that B range. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. And I was a 5.5 out of the premiere. So obviously I'm feeling good right now. I'm very happy about where this show is moving forward. Any final comments, Tom, before we wrap it up?
No, I thought there were some really cool scenes this episode. I know we didn't get into it, the flashback scene, / therapy scene with Daveed Diggs and his ex-wife or ex-lover, whatever that situation was.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting scene. I thought the hallway.
Sarah. I think Zara isn't her name. Zara.
Yeah. The hallway scene where he tried to drop the cloth with and it was pretty heartbreaking. He was like an inch away from grabbing it, and I don't know what the ramifications of that are going to be on Daveed's character moving forward. Whether he's going to be given the same carte blanche as like an investigator. So I thought there's just a lot of really, really cool kind of individual pockets of this episode.
What about you, Shane? Any final thoughts?
So everything I've said basically has been positive. So I will end up with this. I do get nervous that like in Game of Thrones, for example, I thought that Lena Headey was so good with Cersei that in later seasons they felt pressured to give Cersei maybe expanded screen time than they would have if she wasn't so successful playing the character. And I wonder that if Jennifer Connelly continues to just like steal the show completely, if she's probably going to end up more or less being an antagonist to our characters, Daveed and characters from the tale that we come to care about. So I worry that if she steals the show so much, it might take away from the overall like plot of the show. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. But I do think Daveed Diggs had a strong episode, and I think some of these other characters from the tale, as they maybe get more screen time or as the season goes on, maybe those concerns will be nullified a bit.
Yeah, man. We talked about the atmosphere, but I think the second strength of this episode or the show is Jennifer Connelly. And what I find so fascinating is she's got all these moles throughout the third class and the tailies. And meanwhile, the first class have their own moles all planted throughout the train. So I feel like there's like a real cool dynamic there where maybe she gets betrayed or something going forward could be really interesting. All right, let's wrap it up. Make sure you follow my man Tom on Twitter. He is TomDS215. And check out Shane on Twitter. He is at Gus Chickens. Check out A Pod Has No Name on Twitter and Reddit at A Pod Has No Name for Tom, for Shane, for myself. Thanks for watching, guys. See you on episode 3.
See you next week.
I am Iron Man.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I want you to remember the one man who beat you.
The Force will be with you. Always.
A king's time as ruler rises and falls like